Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Today we're going deep on how one of the most successful software companies in the world actually creates value after they buy a business. And I don't mean the usual private equity playbook of we've improved operations and drove synergies. I mean the real stuff. What actually breaks, what you fix, how you decide where to place your bets. My guest today is Kanchan Java. She is a portfolio leader at Constellation Software, running their manufacturing group. For those who don't know Constellation, they've acquired over 500 vertical market software businesses, and they're known for this decentralized model where each business operates pretty autonomously. Kanchan's been there for 8 years, and for 3 of those years, she ran a business called Charter in their dealership software portfolio. That's the business that we're going to dissect today. Kanchan, great to have you.
Yeah, nice to be with you here, Pavel. I look forward to it.
Kanchan, when you inherit a new business acquisition Constellation, what does a typical onboarding look like? Do you get a playbook, or is it typically good luck, figure it out yourself?
I wish there was an actual playbook, like a document that everyone got and everyone worked the same way. But Constellation's very decentralized. I'd say we've got collections of playbooks in different places, and each business requires a different touch. So playbook number one probably starts with our integration plan for a business, and that's something that we work on before we acquire the business. In this particular case with Charter, I got involved actually after playbook number one, where we had some challenges with respect to the product, with respect to the customers. In terms of a playbook for how do you improve customer satisfaction and how do you improve the product, I really worked closely with a couple of mentors in the dealership group, which is one of our portfolios that's known for very strong organic growth.
When you buy a new business, how much pressure do you have to hit financial targets in year one versus focusing on fixing the foundation first?
Well, we evaluate a lot of our businesses based on IRR in terms of a metric. And for those who are familiar with an IRR, you are looking at the timing of the cash flows, and that's quite important to us. Now, in terms of fixing things within the business, I've seen it and I'm confident that you can do both. I think in vertical market software in particular, in mature businesses, because those are the kinds of businesses that we buy, you can continue to run a profitable business while reinvesting a portion of those profits back into the business, into the product, into customer satisfaction, into future growth.
In your experience, how do you deal with uncertainty once you sort of had a certain playbook, let's say a price increase or operation improvement, but things don't go according to the plan? What's your typical playbook there?
We look at our investment case and we have to reevaluate. So in this case, I would say with Charter, we had some competing businesses when we acquired Charter. So we weren't sure from a long-term product perspective how we're going to support all the different products. But we were positively surprised that their product niche was actually quite strong. So to give you an example, Charter built software for smaller agricultural dealerships, outdoor power equipment dealerships. We had another brand that built software for large agricultural dealerships. So we weren't sure whether there was room for both players in the market. We were positively surprised, and we realized that they had a very strong niche, and the customers that would buy their product were not interested in our other products. We pivoted and really decided to grow the business and reinvest a lot of money into that product. And that's when I got involved, was when we actually discovered positively that they had a very strong niche in the market. And we saw that if we invested a little bit, we can actually grow the business significantly.
So I believe that your first move was visiting 50 customers in 1 year, basically one per week. Walk me through what a visit actually looks like and what you were watching for while having those conversations.
What we did is we planned road trips. So instead of seeing, one customer a week, which it really breaks down to, we would do a 1 week road trip. We'd fly into one city, we'd fly out of another city. The first thing we did actually was map all of our customers. You'd be surprised at you might focus on some of your large customers and say, I'm going to go see them. And then you realize there's a smaller customer, an hour and a half away. Why not make the most of it? So we took members of our management team. We went out, we'd go visit the customer, we'd plan a couple of hours at their site, and we'd let them know in advance that our goal for the visit was to learn about, what their business plans were. I think that's really a best practice, is understanding, what are your customers trying to achieve? What are their pain points? What are their opportunities? That way you can be aligned with them. Part of our plan when we were there was to talk about our product roadmap, we talk through some of our key features, because what we found was if you don't tell your customers what you're building, they think they have a long list of things they would like you to build. And as you start talking to them about what you're actually planning on building, and sometimes they see alignment and they say, yeah, that would be helpful. That would be helpful. You start consolidating those requests versus having, customer A wants these 10 features and customer B wants these 10 features. So we found we'd get ahead of it and kind of share, if we could share what we're doing, we could get their feedback on what they're doing versus kind of going in empty handed. And everyone loves, features and software. Everyone's got unique things that they're looking for. So we found that was a best practice. Another part of it was sometimes we take a trainer with us on these customer visits. So they get some free training out of it. We'd walk around, we'd see how different users were using the software. We'd survey some of the users and say, not a formal survey, but hey, what do you think about the product? Do you have any suggestions? It's really, really powerful when you can hear directly from the people who use the software. I'd actually take the development team sometimes too, and they would be shocked because they're sitting there tinkering and trying to build very complicated, very fun stuff to build using the latest technology. And they'd go in and talk to a customer and they'd be like, when I get to this field, the cursor's in this other field. And I just want it to be here because that's where I start typing. So every day, I get to the screen and I'm moving the cursor here and then I start typing. Can you just make the cursor show up there? And I would love those visits because that for a software company is gold in vertical market software. What are easy things that we can do within our software that make our customers' lives easier every day? And if we took that developer back and they put that feature in or they put that change into the software, that customer was thrilled. Like, we're not custom software, but obviously we'd validate that, that's typically how people use the screen. We could talk to our trainers, we can talk to other customers. We don't want to just start breaking things. So I'd say those were kind of the key things, like understand where the business is looking to go to see if we could help them with that, see how they're using the software, provide some free training, even showing them where some of the help screens were within the software, where we post things some of the users didn't know, build a relationship. And then actually another thing that we look for is like, what else do you use? And I'm not just talking about software, but we got really great product ideas walking around some of our customers and seeing, oh, look, there's a whiteboard on the wall. What are you putting on the whiteboard that you're not putting in our software? What can our software do to eliminate that whiteboard? Or are you jumping in from our tool into this other tool? Can we incorporate that functionality into our tool? Can we integrate better with the other tools that you're using? A lot of these things, I just don't think you can get it kind of sitting in the office and having a call with your customers or having, a website where they put in feature requests. So yeah, I think it was really valuable. We took out, lots of different members of our management team, and I think it was really eye-opening.
Oh, this is an amazing story. Did you hire any new hires after you bought the business? I mean, you mentioned to me a product manager that I believe came from outside of the industry. Talk to me about that role and how that role was helping the product going forward.
Something that's been stressed to me that's really important from other general managers within Constellation is to separate product and R&D. And a lot of small businesses that we acquire, R&D decides what goes into the software, and it's developers. It's the development lead. Sometimes the owner of the business is really your product manager. Because they talk to customers and then they come back and they say, we're going to put in this feature, we're going to put in this other feature. So often if we buy a business where the owner retires, we have a void in that area. If the owner is doing it, you have a complete void. If the R&D person is doing it, often they're building things that customers don't end up using because R&D leaders don't have a ton of face time with customers. So that was one of the big changes we made pretty quickly in the business, is hiring a product manager. She did come from outside the industry. When we purchased the business, some of our customer surveys alluded to the fact that the software was not easy to use. And very quickly, I realized that the team that we had, fantastic team, but as they looked at their own software that they've been training people on, that they've been supporting people on, they just couldn't see it. They thought it was a training issue. So we run into this with a lot of our products, that they've been built to serve a lot of different needs, and a ton of functionality has been developed. Think about over a 10, 15-year period, customers have said, I need this and you build it, and I need this and you build it. And most small businesses don't have UI, UX people who try to make it very intuitive and easy to use. Plus, they're really afraid of moving cheese. That's the first thing I heard. Don't move anyone's cheese. If they're used to going to this place and you move it, it's going to be very difficult for everyone. So we brought in a product manager, and the most important thing she came in with was a fresh perspective. She'd never seen the software before, and she'd built other, software tools. And she was a problem solver, and she had a lot of experience kind of with rural customers. She liked going to see them, she liked talking to them, and that was our customer base. And we said, fine, here's a problem, make it easier to use. And that's what she was tasked with. And she did a tremendous job figuring out how to take that little piece of advice and run with it. And there was a lot of pushback internally. One of the things she started doing is she started watching our trainer train people on the software, which I thought was a really great way to do it. And the trainer would be like, okay, so when you go to this, I know it says this, but it means this within the software. And that was such an easy fix. She goes, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, most people assume that this field means this, but it really means the other thing. So one of the things we started with, because she didn't know the software, she didn't want to break anything, was let's rename the fields to say what people are going to think they mean. And we got a lot of pushback from the team at first because they go, well, why would the developers waste their time changing the names of fields? Like, they've got important work to do. I said, there's nothing more important than being intuitive to the customer.
Wow, I love this. One other thing that I believe you introduced was a mobile app. Did that feedback also come from the customers? And if so, also maybe talk a little bit about the feature and why was it important to the business at that time?
Yeah, so that feedback, they had a mobile app, but it wasn't quite a mobile app. It was a web page that you could access for some functionality within the software. And even the previous ownership had told customers that a mobile app is coming. So there was this expectation that there would be a mobile app coming, but then the business was sold and that didn't happen. Our customers that run dealerships, they have service departments. So we saw a lot of need in service. So think about a service department in a car dealership. So this is just a service department for, small tractors or light construction equipment. It functions really the same way. A customer drops off equipment, it's checked in, the technician puts some notes in, all those notes are consolidated. They have to track how much time they spent fixing the equipment, any of the parts they put on the equipment, and that eventually gets estimated back to the customer. From the estimate, they approve the work or they don't approve the work. So there's a whole process flow around service. And because you're dealing with service technicians, they're in the garage, they're in the workshop, and having remote access to the software does make their life easier. So we hired an initiative manager. That's kind of a Constellation term. Your entire job is to dream up and develop an add-on to our software. And again, someone from the outside often works well. Someone with an entrepreneurial spirit, because we want it to be, we don't want to bog them down in this corporate thing. If we're going to spend months and months thinking through what we're going to build, then we're going to hire this massive team to go build it. We want it to be very agile and close to the customer and have that feeling of a startup. So the product manager or the initiative manager we hired in this case, separate from our product manager, he had worked in startups before. We hired him in September. I said, by January, I'd like to see a prototype of the product that you're building, an MVP. And he delivered. By January, we had an MVP. We like to keep our MVPs very, very light. So validate that, this is a problem area for our customers, and we want to make sure we get something into their hands so they can start giving us feedback. After the first 3 months, I would say, we're still putting functionality into it, and it's been a couple of years, and we're still growing what it does every single day. But the important part was identifying the need in the customer base, spending a ton of time with them, getting an MVP into their hands. We usually have an early adopter group, customers that are okay working with a beta version of the product, but really want to get their input to us and are willing to spend time with us to develop something that works for their business. I think having an entrepreneurial spirit in the person that runs these add-ons, I've seen them move very quickly, and they're not afraid to present something that's not completely built yet. Whereas I think sometimes when we hire people from corporate backgrounds, they're they don't want to present anything until it does everything.
Right, Kanchan. So we talked a little about in the beginning how um, once you bought the business, you figure out that the market niche was very attractive. You were able actually to double down. You implemented a couple of initiatives. So over the 3 years at Charter, how did the business change directionally in terms of revenue growth, profitability, and customer count? Just curious, what was the end result of all of that hard work that you put?
In terms of revenue growth, we've more than doubled the size of the business. In terms of profitability, we much more than doubled profitability of the business as well. And then in terms of customer count, that one's interesting because in Charter's case, they had a number of customers. They had an older product when we bought the business and they were sunsetting that product. So we're probably lower in terms of customer count. That's the only metric where we haven't really improved the business significantly. But we do continue to add customers that are a better profile for the current product the way it stands.
Super. So today you run manufacturing and your businesses are embedding AI into products, computer vision, flagging production issues, plain language data queries. Could you maybe pick one of the initiatives and let's get specific on the mechanics and also like the customer ROI on that initiative?
Yeah, so the customer vision one, for example, this was more of a partnership where we met with a company that has this product. We have a customer that had interest in the product, so we're like, let's work together with them. I think that's important with AI. Figure out what you can build, figure out where you want to partner, figure out what you want to buy. What is a problem that we can solve that we couldn't previously solve? So in this case, we found a partner and a willing customer, and we're building out functionality within our MES system to support it, where essentially you can use cameras in your existing facility and be able to use those cameras and train those cameras with some AI models to detect when there's issues on the manufacturing site. So something as simple as people not wearing their personal protective equipment, or there's, some kind of breakage on a paper roll, for example. We have a lot of customers in the pulp and paper industry. So that's what the AI is being used for. It's being used to alert a human being of something that might be wrong based on some of the cameras that are around their facility.
Right. And AI development tends to be very expensive and uncertain. Is there a Constellation-wide AI strategy or is each general manager, group leader making their own bet?
What I can tell you is that our senior leadership is actively working to embed AI into products and on how we improve operational efficiency. Many of our leaders come from a development background, so they know these tools can work. For the businesses that I oversee in particular, as we put together our 2026 strategy plans, AI is on the top of everyone's lists. Each stream is working on it in their own way, in proper Constellation fashion, and then we share what's working. For example, one group started with GitHub Copilot, decided it wasn't the right fit for them, and found that they preferred Cursor instead. So they made a switch. I see this kind of independent tinkering as a real advantage. It's been a big part of how we're building momentum and spreading best practices across the organization.
And you've been at Constellation for a while and you joined before ChatGPT became mainstream. Have you already seen some improvement in developer productivity and has that improvement been meaningful?
Yes, we have. Right now, from a measurement perspective, we look at adoption, and then we have unique cases where we've looked at something and said, estimate how much time it would take you using the old tools you were using. Now let's do it using the new tools. And when we've run those kinds of distinct experiments, we've always seen a significant improvement in developer productivity.
A lot of our readers, they have studied, Swedish holding companies that are famously decentralized. I'm curious, what does decentralization mean to you personally, to your leadership style, to how you make decisions, how you manage people, and how you innovate? What's your personal take on that within Constellation?
What the decentralization really means to me is when I joined Constellation, I'd worked in mergers and acquisitions previously. And when we purchased companies, our goal was always to blend them with other companies we owned. And synergies was a word that was used a lot. We've got this business that does A and this business that does the same thing in a different market. They're going to have one management team. They're going to have one process, and we're going to be able to run both businesses together more efficiently. And when I joined Constellation, I was actually kind of shocked that we don't do that internally, So when we buy two businesses that do the same thing, sometimes we look at them and we say, there's room for both businesses in this market. It's that belief that the small teams, you give up something in cost synergies maybe, but what you get out of it is this closeness to your customers and this closeness to your team that makes you very agile and able to do really great things. Because bureaucracy is the enemy, I think, of innovation and creativity. So what we're hoping for with our model is that the people who are closest to the customers can make the right decisions for the customers and the right decisions to grow the business. And where we're going to create value is by giving them access to a lot of information. It's very lonely running an independent business sometimes. You sit there thinking, am I spending the right amount on R&D? Am I spending the right amount on sales and marketing? Should I be spending more here? Should I be doing more here? Right? Like, how do I take this business forward? And there's not a lot of people to talk to about it often. So you're probably talking to your spouse at home and a cousin over the weekend. Within our model, you have the opportunity to talk to people in other businesses, talk to people within your portfolio, get connected with someone who's faced similar challenges through someone senior within the organization that goes, okay, yeah, you guys are working on moving to cloud. We have this other business that moved to cloud last year. Why don't we connect the two of you and you can talk about it? So that's where we create value. We're not trying to blend everyone together. We're trying to empower everyone with more information and more data so they can make good decisions for the businesses and good decisions for their employees and customers. This model really relies on having people who are curious. And that's what we have within our teams. A lot of our general managers are inherently curious and inherently competitive. They love being able to see what others are doing and learning from it and incrementally improving their businesses every year without being told exactly how to do that.
Awesome. And maybe a last question from me. We obviously gonna have a lot of people listening this podcast. From where you are today, what are your wishes in terms of hiring people? What kind of businesses you want to buy? What word would you like to get out there to our listeners?
Our model works really, really well in terms of buying businesses, empowering teams, sharing knowledge, sharing information, playbooks, if you want to put those words into it. And the other thing I kind of alluded to is it takes special kind of people to work at Constellation in terms of that intellectual curiosity and competitive nature and analytical. The best thing that we can do as we continue to buy businesses is hire good people and hire the future leaders of the organization. And the business, just from my perspective, since I've been here, has done an excellent job doing that and bringing in fresh people every year and training them on how to run businesses and then buying more businesses and giving them opportunities to help out with those acquisitions as well.
Well, this has been awesome. Really appreciate you getting into Wiz with us, talking about Constellation, your success. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Pavel.